Your hair looks beautiful for a woman of your age. A lot of times there's thinning. Is that
Thinning?
do you have pieces? Nothing?
Yeah, of course. Of course, do I have pieces? Are you out of your mind?
Can I take them to my mother too?
Thank you.
Joan, now.
I'm a dyke. And I'm fucking proud of it.
Now, if you've been keeping up with everything going down in Hollywood right now, you know things are getting exposed left and right. Celebrities are coming forward. Secrets are spilling. And Wendy Williams? She just dropped a bomb nobody saw coming. But before we get into what Wendy revealed, we need to talk about August 2014, because that's when everything changed. Joan Rivers walked into a clinic in New York for a simple throat procedure, an endoscopy, something she'd done dozens of times before. No big deal, right? She was 81 years old and still cracking jokes every single week. Nothing was slowing her down. But here's where things get weird. Joan only signed off on one procedure that day, an upper endoscopy. That's it. That's what she consented to, in writing. So tell me why. The minute she went under anesthesia, the doctors started doing procedures she never asked for. Music sting. We're talking a laryngoscopy, a biopsy on her vocal cords, highly invasive stuff. Stuff that requires separate consent. Stuff that can go very, very wrong. And it did. Her vocal cords swelled up. Her oxygen dropped. Her pulse dropped. And you know what the doctors did? They kept going. Now, mind you, Joan Rivers was one of the most famous women in America. She had money. She had lawyers. She had security. This wasn't some random patient they could just mess around with. Or was it? Because here's what the mainstream media never really dug into. Just weeks before this routine procedure, Joan said something on camera that made some very powerful people uncomfortable. And I mean powerful. But we'll get to that in a second. First, you need to understand what actually happened inside that operating room, because it gets so much worse. Okay, so let's get into what really went down in that operating room, because the more you hear, the less sense it makes. So Joan is under anesthesia. She's completely out, trusting these doctors with her life, and instead of doing the one procedure she asked for, they start doing their own thing. First, they do the laryngoscopy. Nobody asked for that. Then, and this is where it gets crazy, one of the doctors decides to do a biopsy on her vocal cords. A biopsy. On a woman who makes her living talking. Now, anyone with half a brain knows that messing with someone's vocal cords is risky. Swelling, bleeding, airway complications. This isn't something you just decide to do on a whim. But they did it anyway. Music sting. And here's the thing that makes my skin crawl. When Joan's oxygen levels started dropping, they didn't stop. When her blood pressure tanked, they didn't stop. When her pulse went haywire, they still didn't stop. What were they doing? Well, according to reports that came out later, one of the doctors in that room, get this, was taking selfies. Selfies. While Joan Rivers is literally dying on the table, this doctor is snapping photos like it's a celebrity meet and greet. I wish I was making this up. CNN reported that staffers told investigators about the whole thing.
Joan Rivers, the famous comedian, has passed away at the age of 81.
The selfie doctor wasn't even supposed to be doing procedures at that clinic. She wasn't certified to operate there. So why was she in that room? Why was she touching Joan Rivers? Nobody has ever fully answered that question. Music sting. Now, Joan's family wasn't about to let this slide. They filed a massive malpractice lawsuit. We're talking gross negligence, unauthorized procedures, complete disregard for patient safety. The lawsuit got settled in 2016. But here's the catch. The details were never released. Sealed, hidden, gone. Why would they seal a medical malpractice case? What's in those documents that we're not supposed to see? And baby, that's not even the strangest part. Because the official cause of death? Brain damage from lack of oxygen. That's what they wrote on the report. Cut and dry. Medical error. Case closed. But some people aren't buying it. Some people think what happened to Joan wasn't an accident at all. Some people think she was targeted. And one of those people? Wendy Williams. You see, Wendy and Joan were close. Really close. They talked all the time when Joan was alive. And word on the street is Joan was telling Wendy things about threats she was getting, things about people who wanted her gone. But before we get into what Wendy knows, we need to talk about the joke. The one Joan told on live TV that started all of this? Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. Because Joan Rivers wasn't just a comedian. She was a woman who said whatever she wanted. And I mean, whatever. She didn't care who you were. President, queen, first lady. If Joan had something to say, she was going to say it. And baby, that mouth of hers made her some powerful enemies. Music sting. Let's go back in time for a second. We're talking decades of Joan going after politicians. No filter, no apologies, just straight shots. In the 80s, she was making jokes about Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. She mocked the royal family constantly, the way they talked, the way they dressed. Nothing was off limits. Did that get her in trouble? Of course it did. But Joan didn't stop. Then came 1992. Bill Clinton is running for president. And Joan, being Joan, decides to take a shot at his daughter, Chelsea. Mind you, Chelsea was only 12 years old at the time. Joan called her ugly on national television. Girl, the backlash was insane. But did Joan apologize? Nope. She just kept going. By 2012, she was openly saying she hated all politicians. Every single one of them. She went on record saying they care more about campaigns than actually helping people. So yeah, Joan had a target on her back for years. That's just facts. But the comment that really set things off, the one that allegedly crossed a line? Music sting. That happened in 2014, just weeks before she died. Now there's a clip floating around the internet. You might have seen it. Joan is talking to reporters on the street, and out of nowhere she says something about a certain powerful couple, something that got scrubbed from the internet real fast. I can't tell you exactly what she said, but I can tell you that people started connecting dots immediately, because right after that clip went viral, Joan Rivers is dead. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's the thing. Joan apparently knew something was coming. She was telling people she was getting threats. Serious threats. Not internet trolls. Real warnings from real people. And who was she telling? Music sting Wendy Williams. Now, Wendy and Joan go way back. These two were tight. They talked regularly. And according to multiple sources, Joan was scared. Actually scared. She was telling Wendy about people who wanted to silence her, people at the very top. And here's what's crazy. Look at what happened to Wendy right after Joan died. Random health scares, forced off her own show, thrown into a guardianship she didn't ask for. Sound familiar? It's almost like someone wanted both of them quiet. Almost like speaking up gets you put away, or worse. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at what Wendy actually said when she finally broke her silence. Because baby, she basically confirmed everything. So Wendy Williams has been off the radar for a minute. We all know that. Health issues, legal battles, that whole guardianship mess that came out of nowhere. But recently, she started talking again. And what she's saying has people losing their minds. Music sting. Now, Wendy didn't come straight out and name names. She's smarter than that. But if you've been paying attention, you can read between the lines real easy. She talked about her friendship with Joan, how close they were, how Joan would call her up late at night just to vent. And here's the thing. Wendy made it very clear that Joan was scared of someone. Not worried, not nervous. Scared. We're talking a woman who roasted presidents on live TV. A woman who made fun of royalty without blinking. Suddenly she's looking over her shoulder. That tells you everything you need to know. According to Wendy, Joan was getting threats in the weeks before her death. Serious ones. The kind that make you update your will. The kind that make you start telling your friends things, just in case. And Wendy was the friend she told. Music sting. Now here's where it gets even crazier, because Wendy herself started having problems right after Joan died. Strange health issues, memory problems. Then she gets diagnosed with all these conditions nobody saw coming. Next thing you know, she's off her show. Then she's in a guardianship. Strangers controlling her money, strangers controlling her life. Sound familiar? It's almost like there's a playbook. Step 1, discredit them. Step 2, call them crazy. Step 3, take away their voice. They did it to Britney. They tried it with Kanye. And now Wendy, girl, the pattern is right there. Music sting. But here's what really got people talking. Wendy hinted that Joan's death wasn't just malpractice. She suggested there was something else going on in that operating room, something intentional. Now, she didn't say the word poison, but other people have, and those people have receipts. You remember Diddy's former bodyguard, big homie CC? He came out and said Hollywood uses certain substances to silence people. He claimed Diddy tried to poison him multiple times. He said he tested positive for cyanide 3 times after drinking bottles in the club. Cyanide. Let that sink in. And according to him, Jamie Foxx got hit with the same thing back in 2023. That mysterious health scare that almost took him out? Allegedly not an accident. Now, I'm not saying Joan Rivers got poisoned. I'm just saying there's a lot of people asking questions, a lot of dots connecting, a lot of coincidences stacking up. Medical examiners found toxins in Joan's body. That's in the report. Her vocal cords swelled up from procedures she never asked for. Her oxygen got cut off, and she died on the table while a doctor took selfies. If that's just an accident, it's the most convenient accident in Hollywood history. But we're not done yet, because there's one more piece to this puzzle that nobody is talking about. So let's put this all together. Because once you see the full picture, you can't unsee it. Music sting. Joan Rivers spends decades going after powerful people. Queens, presidents, first ladies. She doesn't care. She says what she wants. Then in 2014, she makes one comment too many. A joke about certain politicians that rubs the wrong people the wrong way. The clip spreads everywhere. Then it disappears. Weeks later, Joan walks into a clinic for a routine procedure. Something she'd done 100 times. But this time, doctors perform surgeries she never asked for. Her oxygen drops. Her pulse crashes. Nobody stops. One doctor is taking selfies while she dies. She never wakes up. The family sues. The case gets settled. The details get sealed forever. And her best friend, Wendy Williams, the one person Joan was telling everything to, suddenly gets hit with mystery illnesses, gets thrown into a guardianship, gets silenced. Coincidence after coincidence after coincidence. Music sting. Now look, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm just laying out the facts. You can connect the dots yourself, but here's what I know for sure. Joan Rivers had a tell. When she was joking, she'd flutter her eyes and smirk. She'd make it obvious. That day on camera, when she made those comments about politicians, no flutter, no smirk, just a straight face. Joan wasn't joking. She was telling the truth. And maybe that's exactly why she's not here anymore. But here's the thing that's really going to mess with your head. Music sting. Remember that chef who worked for the Obamas? Tafari Campbell? Found dead in July 2023. They called it a drowning accident. But people online started saying he was writing a tell-all book. Then there's Jamie Foxx, that health scare nobody can explain. Then there's Wendy, locked away where nobody can hear her. What do all these people have in common? They knew things, they saw things, and one by one, they're getting silenced. So the real question isn't who Joan Rivers was scared of. The real question is, who's next? And baby, if the things Wendy said are true, if Joan really did tell her everything before she died, then Wendy Williams might be the most dangerous woman in Hollywood right now. Not because of what she's done, but because of what she knows. And whoever silenced Joan, they're watching Wendy too. Now, there's actually a lot more to this story that I couldn't fit in this video. Things about the investigation, things about who else was in that operating room, things that will make you question everything. I'm breaking all of that down right here.